Hello, welcome to Composer's Voice. We have Liburn Jupolli here to speak to us. He's from Kosovo, over in Europe, for those who don't know where Kosovo is. Um, Liburn, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, thank you. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you, man. Um, why don't we start off with introductions? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you are, what you do?
As you mentioned, I'm from Kosovo, from Pristina, the capital. Born in Pristina, raised by a family of artists, more or less. My close family. My mother was a violin teacher, violinist. My father was a sculptor, drummer for a known rock band called Minatori here in Kosovo. So kind of raised in that kind of environment. My sister is also into. She finished for graphic design, so kind of surrounded with a lot of arts. I did most of my undergraduate studies here in combination with France. I continued further in bachelor's and master's in Paris, and then culminating to a doctorate in Sofia in Bulgaria. I am active in the music scene since around the beginning of 2000s in various ways. I compose regularly for soloists to chamber ensembles to bigger formats like orchestras, and and at the same time also work with theater, with film, animation, video games, and all that kind of spectrum. And I do regularly perform with bands, various bands from punk to metal to jazz, playing mainly keyboards and effects, electronics, and a little rarely, I would say, bass.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of more or less my activity as far as creating and performing. I'm also engaged in pedagogical work since 7, 8 years now. I helped the foundation of one of the first modern music faculties in Kosovo, in the UBT University, where we've been functioning now since quite some years, with great staff that includes people from the vocal performance field, composition, audio production, instrument performance, and music management. So I teach there regularly for students of various levels, from bachelor's to master's, and we're working on like newer plans to advance the faculty for a doctoral um, courses, etc., and other aspects like that.
Sure. Fabulous. Um, yeah. Great. So, tell me what you're doing now.
Um, at the moment, I'm trying to like kind of put together all of the work that I've been doing since this past year, and actually the end of last year, which is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. To start my own ensemble. You know, I've been working for a long time with various groups, bands. I've been composing, as I mentioned, and it seems like I'm kind of always uh, not being able to really do exactly what I want. I don't know if that makes sense. So it seems like when I'm working with a band, you know how it goes. You make a lot of compromise, and it's like a thing that you do together. Sometimes it's 70% of your work, sometimes it's 10%, 20% of the total final thing. I'm quite happy with that, but I do have a lot of things which kind of converge also between these scenes which I work with. So my ideas sometimes tend to be a combination of those, and it's difficult to produce something like that. At the same time, it's difficult for a classically trained musician to be able to do that. So I said, like, maybe it would be nice to try to have my own ensemble full of people from very different backgrounds, including all these scenes: jazz, metal, punk, classical, you name it. I have also people in the ensemble which come from hip hop, from R&B, soul, etc. So um, it seems that some of my ideas need to have that type of ensemble, and with a lot of thinking and preparing, I started last year. So what we've been doing is, it's quite difficult to get all these people together. There's a lot of issues, notation, different levels of understanding of music, of approaching it in performance, etc. So what I did is I wrote most of the things, like uh, outlined, if you will, like 8 new pieces, and then I gathered per each piece uh, a specific performance directly in the studio. So what we did is we did like sessions of recording and rehearsing at the same time, so that I could capture for each one of them their best performance, but also be able to work one on one with each one for their specific needs, performance needs. So you would get, for example, like a trumpet player who just learned the part at home, came and knew it by heart, and you'd get sessions. For example, we did a lot of sessions with the drummer, percussionist of the ensemble, where we kind of lay down the basic structures while discussing the work all the time with specific cues that are sometimes just genre based or band based, etc. And then we go and edit afterwards. So this piece that you heard, the destructive imperative, is a kind of example of that. We worked, so like layer by layer per instrumentalist, and then after like most of the material is recorded, we started doing rehearsals. We had very few rehearsals until now, so we could record these videos. I'm looking at that as a strategy also, so that we can use the video to showcase what we're doing, and also start gathering a little bit momentum for uh, financing and other aspects of progress of the whole ensemble. So that's more or less as far as composition is. Recently also wrote some orchestral pieces, and I'm in the process of finishing some others. And yeah.
Fabulous. Let me I want to go back a little bit for a second. And you were just talking about all the different places you play and the types of music and so forth. And it's pretty diverse, right? And what do you feel like your need is there? Is it just, you're a jack of all trades, you do all sorts of stuff, or do you feel like you're drawn to the different styles for a particular reason?
um I think it's a combination of many things. One very important thing why I went into jazz and metal and punk, etc., is not just taste and aesthetic based. It's also like a way to approach a new form of music. I started most of this stuff in high school. Okay, so in the kind of lack of a structured scene here, Me and my generation and other people, like in Kosovo, we embraced modernism quite fast. Like we went from like having no musical schooling educational system to like in the 1947 to a school directly, and then it just multiplied very fast. We got the first rock and roll bands in the beginning of 60s very fast, going from a very kind of going from a culture who was based more on like traditional and folkloric based music. We embraced modernist things very fast, and this doesn't stop. I think we're like this way of embracing things is also part of us still. We tend to, that's part of me too, we tend to embrace things much faster, especially when they're when they have these kind of free and democratic values. I think it goes also with our history in one way or another. But for me, it was like, we started a punk band because we didn't have a oi punk album in Kosovo.
Okay.
So with my friends, we were like, we're listening to oi punk. We love this music. We want to have like Albanian oi punk. So we just did an album, and then it cascaded to something else. It's similar for the jazz scene. Like we had my high school friend who was a clarinet player. We got invited by another friend of ours who is a multi-instrumentalist, and he was like this guy called Visar Kuchi invited me and Dugajin Muajeri, said like, we want to start a quartet. There's not a lot of bands playing original music. Like we have people playing standards and stuff, but like original jazz stuff we don't have. So why don't you try these standards? Let's try, because there's like also bars and places that want to have live jazz. So, and I remember, I mean, there's a video of me on YouTube doing one of my first improvisations. Like, how did we accept to do that? Because it's like we went head on, like with no zero thinking. Oh yeah, that's cool. Let's try to do it.
Right.
And yeah, so more or less it's a combination of that. So like, I'm not doing something I don't like. I really appreciate a lot of the music of these genres, and I've learned a lot. But a lot of it, I think, is also circumstantial in regards to where that aesthetic is in our society now.
Right.
It's
So
just like,
would you
yeah.
say it's almost like you gravitate to it because there's no barriers?
Yeah, could be. I've never thought of it like that, but yeah, it's exciting to be in Kosovo for that matter. Actually, like I've lived in France. I've lived in uh, other parts of. I mean, spent time in other parts in Europe. At least you don't get that feeling. Like in Kosovo, there's this kind of thing where you're like, uh, have you thought of doing that? Yeah. No, I've never thought of doing that. What is it? This. Let's do it. And you're just like, because there's so much to do more, and there's so much space. A lot of our structure in the state and social aspect is much easier. There's much ease to perform, to find space, to communicate, to collaborate. It's much faster, easier, and more direct. Whereas, like in Paris, you would need a permit for like days and write
Right.
this and that. It's not that you don't have to do that here, because there's a system here too, but it just goes faster for the arts, I think. And yeah,
I
there's like a readiness. I don't know how to explain it. There's like a higher readiness to explore, to experiment, to try to. I mean, I asked a friend of mine at uh, like very late into the night when we were very young. This colleague of mine called Senad Yamini. I said like, I've been hearing about this piece called Vexations by Eric Satie. It looks like it's a very long piece. I explained to him the thing, like, it can last up to 14 hours nonstop and blah blah. What do you think? Would you want to do it? And he was like, yeah. And we just did it.
Absolutely.
It's still a bit crazy because it had an effect on us, and we're like, bro, how did we just accept to do that?
Right.
I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, and so let me also I'm gonna sort of just stop and say, just out for the audience out there,
Sure.
if you want to ask any questions, please feel free to write it in the chat. We've yep, we'll either I'll try to direct our conversation to that area, or we'll just ask you directly. And let me, and with that, because I think it's apropos, let me put this question from Vasil. What is the perspective of new music in Kosovo? And I think that's kind of what we were talking about. Like so I'll give you like sort of an American sort of view of Europe. And I say Europe. That's
Very wide.
How about this? It's like talking about the United States. Everybody. I know lots of Europeans that come to New York and they're like, "Oh, I visited the United States." I was like, you're in New York City. That's very different from the rest of the country. But like when I was over there, actually, it was in Munich. I was having this conversation about we're talking sort of the traditions that Europe has lots and lots of traditions. They're they're based from thousands of years of and from point A to point B that they were doing about, and they were talking about like singing, and there's all these fox and stuff, and like this is how you sing Italian, this is how you sing like arias and opera and this and that, and there's this and I when you were like, oh, I have to get a permit, for me it just seemed there was a lot of, oh yeah, before you experiment you need to get permission from the teacher to sort of like, oh, can I use electric guitar in my string quartet? Well, let's think about it. Okay, but only two strings can you use, I'm not, like I said, this is more of just like, as a, American tourist kind of, trouncing around,
Yeah.
Munich and Paris and London and stuff like that, where
I mean, these kind of, you said it yourself, like these countries of Western Europe, they started many of these traditions that have been followed. So it's like they have a lot of history in that respect. It's their thing. I understand how it would be like, for example, for Kosovo, if we would talk about like specific folkloric traditions that we have, like I can see the person who's playing the instrument or knows exactly the type of singing, or would say like, I don't know if you can experiment, but that's not it anymore. So like I understand in that respect that each tradition is a tradition for a reason, because they follow a specific line of work and they try to propagate that further. As far as Kosovo goes, and I would say Balkans also, like it's not that known. I guess in the US and other parts, I've seen it myself in my studies in Paris. Not a lot of people identify Balkans with Europe also, or generally speaking, I'm not saying that people don't know where the Balkans are or blah blah, even though that's also a thing, and
right.
especially in where Kosovo is. So we've done a lot of work, and we consistently work to show people that we're here, and like it's not just that we're here, but we play a role in all this. And as Europeans, we have a very specific history, a very specific heritage, and that goes in line with what you said about these traditions. We do have our specific traditions in folklore, in instruments, in approach to writing, to singing, to phrasing, to writing lyrics, to the type of characteristic things that we sing about or write about. So yeah, it relates to Albanian culture in in different ways. So it's part of Albanian culture, and it spreads and diverges and converges with these other parts that have the traditions of their own, and it also shares a lot of things, and I'm talking this in centuries. So we have, I would say, I would answer Vasil also, uh, who knows much more about these aspects and is an expert in this field. A very known composer also here in the Balkans, and the pedagogue, um, and a very good colleague. So the perspective, I think, for Kosovo's development in new music um, remain in the new people that will compose, that will play. We do need in Kosovo more performers of new music. In that same respect, we need training for performers, because a lot of the traditions that the composers follow since the 2000s can be slightly more difficult to perform for students that usually learn more traditional European repertoire. So we would need a little bit more workshops in that respect from people inside and outside of Kosovo. We do need also a little bit of more stimulation to be educated in composition. More competitions. There are some more in the rise these years, and we've all been pushing forward to have this. But also, we need management in music in general in Kosovo. Like if you tell me, if you ask me, like, what's the perspective, is also like we would need a lot more structures or agencies or labels in new music in Kosovo, so we can promote, because we do have a lot of very good young musicians, composers, a very good generation uh, that is being developed now, that get regularly awards inside and outside of Kosovo. We have quite a strong, I think, quite a strong compositional school here, and I think it's been some years now. So, like, from the first composer that we have, which is in 1909, um, we have a little bit of history now. So, like, if you count, we have contributors. Someone would say like we have less, but people who contributed factually in composition in Kosovo go beyond the 50 mark, as far as numbers go, and I hope it just continues growing. But we do need management and performance more, because
Sure.
we have a lot of works that have never been heard and that are still being written, that are in danger of never being heard also.
Right.
That's a big issue. That's the thing I'm tackling with the ensemble also, one way.
Right. Um, yeah, but I'm gonna write down a question I'll ask later.
Sure.
The but let's talk about business. So
Yeah.
we got a question here about making money. He's
Perfect.
Kreshnik Ukmata. I hope I said that right. Is
Yeah.
making a living from music alone an exception, or is it a feasible way to make a living? And I think why don't we talk a little bit first about how you go about making a living and sort of So you're a composer. When did you first become or know that you were going to go into composition?
Around 12 years old, something like that.
Okay, so
I had a very clear idea. I was like, I'm gonna be a composer, and nobody's stopping me.
right.
Yeah.
So okay, so there you go. You're going to be a composer, and how do you make that happen and feed yourself day to day?
Uh, I'd like to say some anecdotes from professors. Also, they're kind of funny when I think of them. There's always that we still have a lingering idea that kind of of the suffering artist and everything. It's still like a not generally, but like people tend to. It's an interesting thing. Like people tend to think that.
If you
don't,
don't,
don't don't really connect art to money yet.
right, and if you don't
Impossible.
suffer, you can't be like an artist.
Yeah, so that's like kind of a combination of that, and like also, which I think is a much interesting idea culturally, like which is actually factual in Kosovo. Like until the 90s, Robert, we didn't sell our folkloric instruments. This is factual. I recently discovered it with a friend. Like until the 90s, like instrument selling wasn't a thing. You didn't do that. You just gave and gifted musical instruments in Kosovo. So it's very late that we actually started to think of it as a kind of object that you can sell, etc. So it's quite late. I think that goes also with our acceptance of capitalism and all these other globalist aspects in Kosovo. And I think there's still a lot of remnant of not being able to view your work as something that is sold. For me, I mean, look, I'm eclectic, I think, by nature. So I never thought of like, I mean, first of all, I was supported by my family until my end of my until the end of my studies. So in that respect, I think also the culture around family in Kosovo supports people longer. So you don't really think until you finish your studies about how you're gonna sell your music. Especially if it's a little bit more artistic, we tend to have this idea that it's purely spiritual and somehow that will make or not make money, but it's your duty to spread your art and kind of populate the spiritual spectrum of our culture in a way. It's still, there's quite a lot of that. Like maybe it's not said explicitly like that, but it is part of our culture. We still view music especially as something deeply spiritual, like so we don't think about money, especially in that respect when it comes to more artistic music, I think. So there's a difficulty there. There's a kind of difficulty there of like, because it's a mentality thing. Like if you have such high regard and you see it as this kind of almost I don't know what to say, like uh I mean, I said it's spiritual, but when something is so spiritual, you don't tend to
Like sacred.
connect it. Yeah, sacred in that kind of way. You should see like how composers talk about their work and how they take care of it and blah blah. There's this kind of culture here. I'm talking about composition. So in music is different because we do have a very big cultural scene in Kosovo that not a lot of people know about. It's super vibrant. We have, like, last time I checked, we had more than 174 festivals of culture, various fields. We have more than 30, no, actually 43 music related festivals. So, like, 8 festivals for classical music, a lot of them for folk, for pop. Pop and rap are very big in Kosovo, and they're super resilient, and they do make a lot of circulation as far as money goes. And I mean, you've heard also some of the stars related to Kosovo that are either outside of Kosovo or inside. But it's a thing. Like music in Kosovo is really part of an integral part of our identity.
Well,
So like,
it's about function, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly what you said. Like, that's the thing. The function of music in Kosovo is so connected to our identity. Like, I don't know any culture. I could be wrong, but we have this saying like every second person in Kosovo wants to be a singer. That's the thing. Like, you
okay.
hear that every time, and it's true. And music is so present. Like, you will. Uh, there is no one cafe that you can go into without a sound system. They take care of that. Like, it's a special thing. Like, oh, we gotta set up. The in whatever way they do it. There's
Right.
always music there, and it's omnipresent. Sometimes I miss just going somewhere, just without music. It's a thing. So I don't know. Making money in music is a big thing in the pop industry, and they do make uh, quite good money, and they live off of that, and you know, it's a thing, man. I'm telling you, especially for the mainstream. The mainstream in Kosovo is does well, and knows how to sell it, and has actually made their own scene, made their own kind of public way how they distribute. They play a lot in Kosovo, outside of Kosovo. They've set several standards of payment, of all this kind of thing. I think we need that approach in artistic music. So as far as living from music, you can actually. There's many possibilities, and I tell to my students, like, you just got to be a little bit more diverse. Because if you're a good composer who knows a little bit of, like, not a little bit of, but if you know theory and you can practice it well and blah blah, you have a lot of work. I mean, seriously, there's a lot of work. Like, but you gotta be diverse, and you gotta go and network and get in there. Because
I
there's space for music in Kosovo, always. You know.
I agree with you 100%. I think, in my experience, there's what's the advertised route of like, oh, this is how you succeed as a composer, bup, 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 bup. And that advertised route is kind of almost a false lead. Like,
Yeah.
making commissions, like, being a teacher. And I'm not saying that those things aren't viable and a way to go. They are. But like you said, there are so many other ways to be a composer in your field and make money.
Yeah.
There's there are many, many, many. And like for me, I'm not a commission guy. I I can't write on commission. I can't. I have, and it's okay. But for that to be like my bread and butter, like that's how I'm going to survive. I'm just not built that way. And I think like you said, if as a composer, if you diversify and you do everything, and then just like network, do everything, try everything, you'll find your path.
Yeah.
There'll be something where you're like, oh, I like doing this, and they pay me too. Then more, keep doing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like part of it is also like how you view communication in music, Like, I can see that a lot of the culture, when people get stuck, is because of how they view how they communicate with music. So like, again, I think it's also cultural, because you're like, if you think of your music as something so sacred that only you can write, and only you can see, and only you know what's best, and etc., that's great, but it's quite exclusive also.
Sure.
It creates this kind of bubble around it, and it's less approachable, which is, I don't think any composer wants that. Like, we do write to share. I don't know. I could be. I mean,
I think
there's.
you're wrong.
I'm wrong. Okay.
And the only reason why I say that, first of all, I think that you have a great sort of viewpoint and you experiment something. But, I usually call composers megalomaniacs.
Hmm.
And the reason I say that with love, because, but I think, so they're, what's the right word? Like sort of tropes or prejudices or things oh sopranos are divas, right?
Yeah.
Not
Okay. So you think
they're not, you know what I mean? Like they're
I
wonderful
get
to
it?
work with, but there's something that draws that personality to it. And I think when you're talking about like that bubble, and I think you're right in that composers need to get out of that bubble, because that's what they're in their room or their cave. I usually call it the cave, and they've got to create that masterpiece, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they create a world that they're in control of.
I'm all for that. Like you can do whatever you want in that respect. But then if you're gonna, I mean, when the masterpiece is done, it's not yours anymore. So like you're either letting it there, or you're either just showing first of all the people in your home, and then it's a question of communicating what you finished as a megalomaniac or not megalomaniac. Like
Sure.
that's the thing. What I'm talking about more, like, why is it a problem to promote yourself on a poster, in the street, in the road, how they do for clubs?
Absolutely. Well,
Like
and
I
look,
just want to see like a poster on the road of a composer. Who cares? Like, why not?
why not?
Like, because the thing is that I see also, not only with my music but also my colleagues' music, you don't hear about it, and people like to know. I mean, maybe you don't want 10,000 people in your concert, but I believe you would like 5 to 10 people in your concert. I'm saying, like, I'm not saying that they don't have. We actually have a lot of healthy public for classical and contemporary music in Kosovo. So it's not that
But
there's not interest, but in order
but
for this to get
there
paid,
needs to
it's
be an
gotta be.
audience.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's part of the deal. That's why we write it down. If you don't need
yeah,
an audience,
yeah,
don't
yeah,
write it down. Keep it in your head. It doesn't matter.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah,
and I think that's there's for in my point of view, there's like that disconnect between like a composer's career is writing music, and I'm always just like, yes, but your career is also to get the music out there in whatever fashion you want. It's like you said, maybe it's just family and friends. You start that in the beginning and so forth, but you want it to grow. It doesn't. I mean, you want normally people want more than 4 or 5 people just listening to your music, but
yeah.
sometimes that's enough, which is okay too. If
Absolutely.
But then anyway, and then that's where you connect making a living, right?
Yeah,
The people that listen, hopefully they get something out of your music. Whether it be function or art or whatever or inspiration, and then what they do is they give back to you so you can do more. I mean, that's
yeah.
really how it goes. Well, at least that's how it goes now.
Yeah, and then I think the second thing about this is how you view what is your role as a composer. So if you view it as like, my role is just to express myself, that's one way, you know. But for example, I mean, there's many ways, because if you have an ability, if you see it as a function, then it could be also you doing something for someone else, you know. And as that's how I view theater and film, and that's how, like, and these other parts of the industry, like, for me it's interesting to try and get the idea of the director,
Yeah,
like, that's a thing. You can do that with composition. Like, it doesn't have to be just your idea. It can
right.
be your idea and execution of someone else's idea.
Right.
Because you do that also with books when you read them, with anything that you get inspired anyway. So I think it's very important for students to understand that, like, their function can be, if they want or not, but if they want to do this in a more healthy, less intrusive way, I would say, like, they can still continue doing what they do, but they can also serve. You know what I mean? This
Exactly.
is like, what's your role also? Like, I'm a composer. I also serve, other people, because other people have ideas that can't get them. That don't, they have ideas, but they don't know how to put them in music. So you're like, okay, you're gonna serve and help them realize that, because they don't know how to do that.
Well, that's not their
With music.
expertise.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the thing that I'm saying, like, with communication, you can, and the role. I think a lot of it is how you view yourself, your role, how you communicate, etc. Because in the end, it's much more diverse than how we think of it. You can do much more. It's not that it's not a hassle. It is hard.
It's
It's
hard.
not easy. I'd rather be just writing my own pieces anyway.
Right. I mean, me too.
It's, of course, it's easier.
Yeah. And I guess, with Fator Vula asked, what would you consider the most challenging aspect of composing music? So I guess, like, really part of it is just the career base, the mechanical parts of, like, your career. Communication is part of it, just like,
Yeah, composing, I don't know. Composing is, I tend to view it, especially now, as something that will never stop. Like, as long as I'm alive, I'm gonna learn new things, how to do it. Because it is actually, like, the challenge is, I think, a big challenge is the tools, the instruments that play this. We don't know them. I mean, I just went through uh, Ravel's Tome de Couperin, and
oh, yeah.
I made this many days reflection on this, and I wrote this, like, you can see how much he knows the instruments, man. It's you can hear the guy knows exactly what an oboe can do.
Right.
So when I say exactly, it's like, because that doesn't end, because instruments are really complex things. Like, we tend to view them more simply because we have, like, a structure, but they're so complicated. It's so hard to keep them in tune. They react to the environment, and they're part of nature. So there's always something more to do there, and I think that's the challenge. Knowing, not just knowing, but keeping in track with the instruments you write. And for me, I think, for me, I wish I could play all of them. I don't like playing, woodwind and brass instruments, uh, but I would like to know them more deeply, as a performer, actually, because
Sure.
I do write much easier for the piano, because I did study the piano. I mean, I can tell you that instantly, and I say it also to my students. Because I've played the piano so much, I can approach it. It's faster, it's easier. I know when I hear the thought in my head, the musical thought, I know how it's gonna be in the piano, in forte, in fortissimo, in whatever octave, in whatever way. I know how to make, concrete, water, whatever. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, because I have a more intimate knowledge of its possibilities. I think that's a big challenge, because you can learn any type of language and, you know, scales, or harmony, or counterpoint, or this or that technique, or this technique. But that's I think more of a meta thing that you learn, and then you digest with your own experience. But the actual challenging part is the instruments you're gonna write for,
Sure.
because it's insane. Like, Tom de Couperin can be played by anyone. It will still be that.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think that's a big challenge. Like, how are you going to write something that is, despite of the level, despite of how it gets played, where it gets played, what temperature, this ability, that, it's still going to be that. I think that's a big thing. And this transcends notation, transcends anything you can learn in I don't want to say learning in school, because that's just a phase. Yeah, I think also the problem is that we kind of, you finish bachelor this, master that, because this doesn't stop.
Right.
You gotta. That's also the challenge, keeping up with all of this. It's so vast.
There's a lot of stuff to keep up with, but it always has been, right? I mean, that's the truth of
Yeah,
it, because
yeah,
you're right. When as a composer, you're probably anyway. I also believe that as a good composer, you're always learning. There's always something new. There's always like, yeah, maybe it's something like, oh, it's a different instrument, but even in whatever instrument you're playing, there's something to find and explore.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know. I have some questions about your band. The band, you're gonna have to say this for
Met
me.
Nyovsham. It means with
Meteosha.
connections.
Oh,
Yeah,
sounds.
it's about nepotism. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Man, this is one of my most active bands, um, but it's transcended a lot. I'll send you some information about that in the meantime. It's a band that we started with this punk thing. We did an oi punk album in 2011. Then, kind of jokingly, because the people that made this album, they're very eclectic group of people, like listening to many things, thinking very differently, etc. And so while we were doing the first album, it was so hard to do it practically. We were joking around like, what are we doing after we finish this album? We were like, oh, we're gonna make another 20 albums. So the joke became true. We actually did this thing in 2016 where we worked on and off in about 6 to 8 months and recorded 144 songs in very different genres, ranging from hip hop to old traditional Albanian singing from Kosovo and Albania to electro house type things. Toto knows because he mixed 20 albums and of ours, and parody of metal, many genres. We promoted that and it was quite successful. We sold like everything we had in the concert, but as a result of its complexity, we're kind of stuck with that in a way.
Okay.
So from 2016, we didn't really do much besides playing festivals with some of the songs which were successful at the time. It's a weird thing. This kind of group, 'cause we tend to say like we can't stop the band because it doesn't exist. you know, it's
Sure.
like we're always saying like people in the band are saying like, oh, I'm not gonna be in the band anymore. It's like you can't not be in it because it's not there. It's kind of transcended in this kind of weird thing that we really don't know what to do with. There's also the practical thing that most of the band members are not in Kosovo now. Liz is in Finland. Our singer Timur, the second Timur Ibar, is in Sweden. Almir, the guitar player, is in Canada. It's only me, Granit, the drummer, and Timur Jabiri, who's actually in the US right now, that are here. So we're kind of, imagine when you do 20 albums, like what do you do after? So we're kind of like, always when we meet, it's complicated. Like we've try to kickstart the thing again, but we tend to just overcomplicate our communication and we don't really do something. I think the future for it is interesting because I think we're gonna get back together. Get back, as in, I don't know what that means, but we've been looking forward to a re-release of the 20 albums. We call it the first arc.
The first arc, yeah. So, all right. So that leads to, what's the future, and can you tell us about the 40 albums you released? So 40, is it 40
No,
albums?
it's not 40, it's 20.
20,
It's 20.
20. So
Uh, yeah.
yeah, so
I
you
think a re-release is in point because there's a lot of people that want to have it that couldn't buy it
right.
because it came like as a package with 20 albums inside, and yeah, it's quite a crazy thing. We're big fans of these, as you say, megalomaniac things. We're like, you know,
I'm
oh,
a
we want to
big
have dolphins on stage. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm a big maximalist guy. Bigger,
yeah,
better. Keep going. This you
yeah,
want
yeah, yeah.
more, more, more.
Charles Ives all the way, man. At one
Yeah.
point, we contemplated like throwing fireworks on stage, but we didn't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah,
Don't do
no.
it. Did you ever hear of? Was it called? It's not White Snake. I feel like it was a Great White. They
Yeah,
did that, and they literally burned the place down.
yeah. That's not cool. But
Yeah, not
we
cool.
did do many similar things. Like we had like clowns on stage. We had. It's a very fun band. I mean, I would love for it to get kickstarted again, but
Sure.
and also for Toton to help us with the craziness. But yeah, I think a re-release for sure, you know, of the 2020 albums, and then see where it goes.
Sounds like it's prime for a comeback tour.
uh, just a tour because we didn't ever make a tour. Like it's a very weird band, man. I'm telling you, like, how we promoted our first album. We said like, okay, every band in their promotion, they go to the place, they do all this hard work, and then they perform again. We're like, in our promotion, we want to have fun. So we're like, okay, let's invite all of our band colleagues. We give them the album, choose whichever song you want, play it. So we actually went to our album promotion. Literally, we went in our album promotion, we partied, and we listened to our music from other bands.
That's great.
Yeah, we have this kind of. There's a very active and exciting aspect about this band, and I think the public reacts well to it, and I would look forward to doing some things soon.
It's very punk.
Yeah,
I think people forget like sort of like the real roots of punk, and
I agree.
it's more about just throwing stuff out there. Just
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Like a lot of people are like, why are you doing hip hop? We're like, because we just want to do a hip hop album, like that's it. And I think just the fact of releasing 20 albums is an actual punk gesture. Because you're like, oh, the alternative scene maybe doesn't produce a lot. Sure, it does. 20 albums.
Exactly.
We actually had plans to continue. I don't know if we'll ever do that because it's insane, but we had plans to like have 4 stages of this. Like the second stage was like around, I don't remember, 80 albums, and then the third was like it culminated to something like 400 albums in the end, with like a simultaneous concert in many cities where each of us is in a specific city and a different country, and the countries where we're not there's actual robots playing. Like that would be like the last arc.
I love it.
But obviously that's insane. But maybe it'll happen. I don't know.
Man, like I said, I'm all about a little insanity and yeah, making it happen. A lot
Yeah,
of it look, it doesn't exist until it does.
Yeah, I think
Um,
people like that too. So they're like, "This really happened. I want to see it." Yeah.
so let me backtrack and ask you a little bit more about this group where you did destructive imperative.
Mm.
So you were talking about bringing an ensemble together. Um, well, first you were talking about the band and how you contribute to it, and you contribute a certain part. And it seemed like what you were talking about is the ensemble is more about um, it being more you. Did I get that right, or is that
Yeah.
not right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so let me start by why put the band together specifically.
Yeah. So
Oh, by
first
the
of
way,
all,
what's the band called?
it's called Liburn Jupolli Ensemble. Yeah. I was thinking about this a lot actually, and I've had some comments from colleagues, etc. Why is it like this? Um, I've had various permutations with bands, and it just seemed like the most practical way to name it, because as you said, like I've tried many versions of, and I still continue because I do work with colleagues a lot, but I feel like it would be nice to have like kind of my own thing, and I mean that in a very broad way and in different levels. So, like, first of all, I want to do something with a bass, with the Octo, the instrument I invented, with two violins, four metal singers. They're there. I can do it. I don't have to try and find a specific type of musician somewhere, and like I want to have this kind of group, not a group. I want to have this platform of people, because I don't want the ensemble also to be fixed. I want it to be modular. I want it to be able to grow, to shrink, to be uh, bigger, to be an orchestra. At some point, we're going to have more than 40 people. That's in the works also. It depends on the work. So that's practical. Like, I would like to be able, to do that kind of thing practically with these instrumentalists. The second thing is, like, I do view music, as I said, as a collaborational thing. So I'd like also to have a group of people which can be educated with us, because there is a lot of people from various scenes. Because I've conversed with all of these scenes, and I can see there's people from the alternative scene that want to know more and play more experimental stuff than they do with their own band. Same goes with like composers that like alternative music but can't really go there because they don't have the specific. So I want it to be also a hub for people that are interested in just playing any type of music, actually, not even just contemporary. I have plans, and I actually have compositions that are super diatonic, like, why not,
Right.
in the sense of, like, not just why not, but I want it to be a space where you can work on your thing also, not just my works. It's primarily that, because it starts from there. But I've talked also with other band members, like, we're gonna have to start like rolling in works of their own too, because they do make quite interesting music, all of the people there. It's not only musicians, also there's like visual artists there, and people who are like kind of in the middle of visual and uh, audio stuff. So um, yeah, that's kind of more of it, like a kind of hub where I can do exactly and whatever I want
Right.
in whatever way, and also where people can do the same. You know.
So okay, so that's great. So
I'm
I
sorry,
totally I
Robert.
totally
Let me just
get
give
it.
you like a sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking like how to do this, and like, you know what, a bit of Zappa you know, a bit of the Zappa mentality, a bit of like the Zorn mentality, a bit of Reich mentality, a bit of Glass mentality, a bit of like our folkloric ensemble thing. You know, it has to be something like that. I think where there's space for this, because like Zappa won't work in itself just like that. Glass Reich thing won't work in itself like that in this context here. You know, you name it, all the other ensembles. So I think like you're gonna need to have this kind of combination of mentalities for it to work. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
No,
Small.
that's fine. No, I think you look the sort of ensemble, like the glass ensemble, and like and just there's a they needed to get their music out there, and they created an ensemble to do it. And there's varying levels of participation in the with participation in the creation process, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, like I totally get the sort of creating an ensemble to perform your work, and that's part of what I was thinking I was trying to get at is like you were talking about how you've participated in all these bands and you contributed a part. So this felt like, oh, you're getting more, like the percentage of your collaboration is more,
Yeah,
right?
more
Like
or
as
less.
a composer, you're doing all this, which I think is great model. Makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense on a lot of different ways, until you call it a hub. Of which So here's my question: why do you want people to contribute their own stuff to the ensemble?
Because
I mean, they're already playing, right? Like you were talking. Well, I'm sorry, because one of the things you were talking about with the hub is sort of their learning, right? So it could be just learning your music, but I feel like you have a function in where you're a teacher. You're kind of teaching them not only your music, but contemporary music ideas. We'll leave it at that. But that's not all you're doing.
yeah, I mean, well, I'm not doing that yet, because so that's to come. But I mean, there's quite nice things out there. You know, like I hear these works that they do, and they don't necessarily get the platform, or like or the chance to be played at all. So like, why I actually like it helps me. You know what I mean? Because there's two functions. Like I think, first of all, how you're gonna get developed as a composer without ever hearing somebody else, man. We have all these festivals, but like I don't want to wait for like uh June for a specific festival to hear some music. I want this to be like something much more simple. Like I want to hear a work of my colleagues and mine every other Friday. Because I'm composing all the time. Like I need stimulation, man. Like this is for me also. Like I think not only for me, this is primarily for me, because I want to have that. I want to be surrounded by that. I want to hear that, because also like we are quite we are overfed mainstream music. Overfed, man. Like I'm not against mainstream music in any way.
Right.
I like a lot of it, and I actually do some of it.
Right.
But we're overfed the same things so many times. Like it's beyond, like I'm telling you, it doesn't even compete with TikTok, man. Like it's because it's physical, and you go from like I go out to buy something, I'm gonna hear like so much means you can't escape it, bro.
Right.
Like, and I'm saying like, just add another flavor, and I'd like to add this with the ensemble in that way that like I can that we can have like smaller concerts We can play in some bar. We can, just like diversify a little bit the scene, and this is gonna be good for everybody, not just me, and for them also. They're gonna see like, oh, like I'm playing in a bar now. Should I write that octave?
Right.
I think it's good because they need. I think everybody will benefit from a little bit of diversity. Just a little bit of diversity, man. Like you can listen to that mainstream thing every day. Maybe once a week you'll hear some weird people playing music. Like it's not gonna do anybody bad. We actually have a lot of places where they can play more regularly. So I'm kind of just trying to find a way where we can progressively make things together and at the same time kind of attract uh, the business side of it, because I think there's a space for that, because you have everything there. You have like young people, you have a young energy, you have good expression, you have professional people, you have interesting people. It's all there, man. You just need to uh, to promote it in a different way. I think like because we do have a lot of alternative hubs out there.
I
That's
think
part of it. I don't know if that answers the question,
no,
but
it does, and I think so. I agree with you on every level. The first is just like it's not that I dislike pop music. I love it. I love a lot of stuff. I like it, I have a reputation of not liking classical music, and that's not.
oh, really? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's not true. I love classical music. I just like I don't need to hear Bach again.
Hmm.
He wrote a lot of great stuff. I've heard it a lot, a lot. I like listening to new stuff. I like listening to new ideas that people are creating now. And like it's like I'm exactly like you in the thing is I want to be inspired. You know what I mean? I want to be inspired. I want to be like, oh wow, that sounds great. I want to use that in my composition, or it just makes me feel good, right? I mean, there's just like you're inspired by something, and you're just like, wow, I'm glad I heard that.
Yeah.
Somebody else asks, so looking back on your career so far, um, what are you most proud of achieving, and what ambitions do you still hope to fulfill?
Yeah, that's Ulber is uh, is a bass player himself, and he plays in a very good band here called Hubwolf. They're like a group of four uh, brothers which play this kind of new metal and grunge thing. Very good band. So, and he's also the manager for one of these alternative hubs which I mentioned, which is called Defy Them. Is It's a great hub where they're like developing many new things in the alternative scene and pushing like the rock and alternative music scene forward. Ilber, I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't think of myself like that. I don't know. Like it's for me, it's important to be able to do my thing more than achieving. I don't see things as. I mean, I'm happy, like to be able to finish a certain type of work, to be able to communicate that. But like, I don't know. For now, I don't know. I don't think in that way. I don't know how I would say which achievement is. I don't know. It's strange. I don't view it like that. I wouldn't. You know what? I'm happy I was able to finish this orchestral work last week. I think that's
Why?
an achievement. Actually, I finished an
Why?
orchestral work which was sorry.
Why?
It was difficult, man. It was difficult because there was this kind of uh, you know uh, there was a specific call with specific things, and it was tough to write it. So yeah, I think yeah, I think that's part. I think I would be proud of pulling myself from my teenagehood to finishing my doctorates. I had to pull like my punk self out of the, I think that's, I'm I'm kind of proud of that. That's so weird.
Not
Like
worried.
I'm happy about that because that really took a lot of personal development to do. Because I started very young, like with this, and was kind of always too fast, or like really couldn't match my speed with school or anything. I did finish school, but I finished it in such a weird way, like um, like making harmonic exercises backwards, like making my, my teachers angry about that, weird stuff like that, or like almost not going at all in the fourth year of high school, playing or taking a break from first year of bachelor's to do my first instrument. It's like this kind of impulsive weird thing. So I think i'm I'm happy that I was able to try a new way of work, and to understand that, yeah, I can do that too. Like if I can be chaotic, but I can also be, I think that's also important. For I try to tell the students to that, like you're still the same person, you can just work differently. You can play around with these tools, you can do these different things. And yeah, I think so what I'd like to fulfill is, yeah, I'd like to be able just to write my music and that's it. I do enjoy performing, but it's so wide. Like I enjoy performing jazz, I enjoy performing many things. You know what? I'd like to play more with orchestras in the near future. Play my works with an orchestra, with my ensemble, and write my own music exclusively. Okay, so if that's gonna be possible, Liber, I would be very happy and make money out of it.
Why not?
Yeah,
So let me just. I have some other comments about the future, but let's leave that to the end.
sure.
Tell me about this piece, destructive imperative.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes when I compose, sometimes there's just this. I don't know what to tell you. Like I can see the work, but it's so far when I can see it. Like I can see the whole work visually
Hmm.
in my head. So I have this kind of thing that's happening. It's very far. It's so small. It's like trying to see like an airplane very far. It's usually very dark. And like I can see that there somehow. I had that kind of thing with this piece, so I can see where I want to go. I want this very, like an avalanche of like energy bomb, bursting, and just waves of this sound force in a way. It got translated into this kind of doomy type thing. And tell you the truth, the brass part wasn't intended in that way exactly. It came like into form while recording, and you know while finishing the first parts with the drums and the octo bass, electric guitar, synths. So yeah, that was kind of the thing. It comes as a wave of new works which are quite inspired by my first trip in the US, in New York. And I got like a huge dose of like inspiration from there. I don't know if I would like to live there, man. So like, you know,
I
that's up
get
to
it.
you. But a 1 week, 8 day visit was insane. Like, was so crazy. I don't know. But growing up, I think also with American culture in Kosovo and consuming so much of US culture from childhood to, it was such a thing. Like it was like going somewhere that I don't know, you knew everything, kind of, but it's just not that huge, man. It's like I'm still having epiphanies. I think it's lasted like that. It's such a. I think it's big. Like it's big, but it's also very small for me. Like that was the thing. Also, like you can understand so fast many things.
Right.
And I do enjoy that kind of megalomaniac thing, but I do enjoy that. Like it was a great experience, man. It's super interesting, um but I think it's very important also, like for a lot of people that live in Europe, or especially I think in Europe, where they do consume uh you know US culture, that they should go once in the US, specifically in New York, if they actually consume things from New York and etc. I did, grow up with a lot of things that come from New York, so it was like, a lot of things that I knew now just got like that last bit of information.
Sure.
I'm like, oh yeah, I get it now. I know what, all these interviews that we watched. I'm like, okay, now I get why Cage is saying this. I get it. I can hear it. Or
Right.
like, because it's also not the same time period, of course, but you're like, you understand. You just have to walk. And you understand. You understand Steve Reich. You understand Glass. You understand Cage. You understand, a lot of the jazz culture, the hip hop culture. Just a walk in Harlem, man. That was enough for me, man. A walk in Harlem was like, okay, I get it. I get it. Like, I get this. I understand this culture because you can feel it from the music. You can understand it to a certain point intellectually, but you gotta be there, man.
Right.
Just like I think it's the same for our music in Kosovo. You gotta be here. Like, you gotta be here. You gotta come here in order to complete that puzzle of whatever way that you think about our culture or our music. It's there. You can see it like in the way people talk, things work, etc. Of course, this is, I mean, a general idea of one time going there, but I think it works also, this generalist thing. You get a, of course, it's much more complicated than that, but I don't know, man. In any case, it was super inspiring.
Hey, this is why you go and visit new places, right?
Yeah. No,
But
but
it
man,
is.
I'm telling you, I visited almost all of Europe, and a little bit of Turkey. But man, this was a real culture shock, because like going to Paris is not really a culture shock for people from Kosovo. You know, in Kosovo you have more or less the same infrastructure. Kind of not the same mentality, but it's Europe, man. Like, you're not gonna be surprised that much. The biggest cultural shock is that they say, "Excuse me, can you give me a glass of water?" Here we just say, "Give me a glass of water,"
Okay.
and it's not considered impolite. It's great if you say please, but with people that you're close to, it's weird if you use it all the time. It shows like kind of a distance sometimes. Of course, it's not that very polite, but you know what I mean. Like,
I do.
this was a real shock, man. Like, this was crazy. Like, I hadn't been I hadn't experienced in a long time, maybe something like that. It's like hard to grasp, and you're like, wow, like you're kind of trying to push it away so you
Right.
can get everything. And it's also, I think it's beautiful, chaotic, crazy, insane, interesting. I think it's a great way to experience what we talk about in Europe, what capitalism is. We talk
Sure.
about that all the time, and we think this is capitalism, but no, man. No, 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 no. Like, I told my friends, like, like, Man, you think you know capitalism? Go try it. Like this is not like, I mean, of course I'm joking and exaggerating a bit, but like it doesn't compare, man. Because you can see how it affected people deeply. Like you can really see how it's inside of the people's being. It's not
Oh
the
yeah.
same. Like it's part of how they are now. It's not like, it's not like, oh, look at these new malls in Kosovo, because that's a new thing after, especially after the war, like the mall and this capitalist thing. But no, man, like it's not just about the mall. Like it's the way people perceive themselves, their reality, society. It's quite a thing, man. I don't know. It was crazy, and it gave me like a lot of kind of maybe freedom, I would say. Not just freedom, but a lot of the ideas I had in my head, I was like, you know what? Like, we're just doing them now. Like, we're just doing them now. Like, I don't even want to think how. We're just gonna do them now, and that's it. You know what I mean? I'm like, because
I
I was
do.
thinking about this ensemble for years, man. It's not just now. And I'm like, no, I'm getting back to Kosovo and I'm doing this. I don't care how. Like this is gonna happen. You know.
That's great. We like to be inspiring here in New York. It's tough. I remember somebody asking me like, "Oh, what's the thing that you most like about New York?" And I was always just like, "Well, it's intense, and there's that constant drive that's like pumping and so forth." And they're like, "Okay, that's great. They're like, what's the thing that you hate about New York?" I was like, "Well, it's intense, and it's got that constant drive. You know, it's always there. You either love it, you hate it, or you're both. You know, it's a thing."
Yeah. I mean, um, it's funny because then you're like, I was like, wow, like now I understand why I feel so fine in Paris. Like it's so easy because it is crazy. Also, Paris is crazy, man. Also, but it doesn't compare, man. Doesn't compare in any way. Like it's, just the idea of the amount of skyscraper. Like we take so many things for granted in our reality every day. But you're like, as a foreigner, you're like, you know, a lot of people will say like, touristy thing and whatever. But it's a reality, man. Like living in the middle of all of that. It's crazy, man.
It's
I mean, in
it's
the sense of like, not the bad way. Like, I really think it's like it gives me the confidence to do 15,000 ensembles in the day. And it gave me like confirmations of like, you know what, 20 albums wasn't enough, and I knew it. I knew it even before, but you tend to get into this kind of thing here, like it's not that you can't do it, but I think the scale itself, just the scale makes an effect, man.
sure,
Just the physical scale, because in the end we're also very visually uh cultured, in
absolutely.
today's society. It's a lot about what we see, actually, not only what we hear. And just seeing that insane infrastructure that was made by people, like why can't we do anything, anything? And it's not just a thought, because that it's not just a thought, man, what I'm telling you. Like seeing that gave me like a, judicial written, like, yeah, I knew this existed, but it actually does. So
Right.
now I'm getting back and doing exactly what I want. You know what I mean? I don't know, it's weird because
No,
you
it's
tend to
great.
like, oh, I'm doing with this, how is it gonna work and that. No, it's just gonna work. It's just gonna work. We're gonna find a way, because like they have like, you know 12,000 story skyscrapers. Why can't we have a doom jazz thing?
And I feel like
in
that's
Kosovo.
kind of like sort of the what's right, the not inspiration but motivation of, like, especially doing new music is just doing it, like go forward and like make it reality. It's not just an idea. It's like, or like, I mean, New York is like this. You have this iconic view of New York, but it's a different story when you're on the streets. I always
Yeah.
remember someone visiting me, and they're just walking down Broadway, and they just burst out into song, and I was like, "Well, that's very nice." And they're like, "I'm singing on Broadway," and I just had to laugh. I was listening, like, yes, yes, you
That's
are.
perfect. Perfect.
So tell me a little bit more about this video. You're talking about the visualization. So I find that the visualization on this video that you have is well, tell me about it. Like, first of all, did you create the visualization or did an
No,
artist?
no. There's it's colleague, and he's part of the ensemble. Donat Peroli is called. Uh, he's coincidentally also one of my cousins from my mother's side. In any case, you wanted to know that. Uh, yeah, you know, I wanted a clean video where you can hear the piece, but my idea was slightly. Uh, I wanted, like, I had such good performances in the studio. I wanted like to mix some parts of that with the live recording. So we had a lot of difficulty actually doing that with the shots that we have in the video. We had like separate takes. Mixing all of that was super, super, super difficult. So I didn't really intend of to doing it that way. And I was like, okay, so we're trying this for such a long time. It took like 3 4 months just to decide what to do and to kind of get it, not just to decide what to do, but to try different versions. They weren't working clean. And we worked with Vegim Kamberi, one of our friends also, and Matthew Jouf, also this friend who recorded. But mostly we had like edits from Vegim, and they weren't matching. I tried also doing some stuff around, and we didn't really like it. It wasn't really fitting. So I said, just go the other way. So like, I wasn't a fan of doing like a kind of clip thing, but I said like maybe we can do something in the middle. So we have all these live takes which you can hear. Actually, they are the sounds that you hear, but we're gonna use all of the visual material that we have. We'll just we'll layer them and make them as kind of like make a dialogue between them. And we wanted to test. I really like these new trends in visual arts with Touch Designer and all these new AI stuff, and these technologies which are more for projection and visual mapping and other stuff like that. I do enjoy that type of very IDME type Aphex Twin thing. And thankfully, he knows, he's one of the very rare people here that uses some of those technologies. So we kind of experimented with the videos we had. But the thing is that it's interesting because you're like 3 months into many edits, and then with 4 hours of work, we finished all of what you see from brute material. That was edited and was clean. Then we just like went in with this new mentality, and we realized this. Because I tell you the truth, I was also like tired of editing, and I was like, we just gotta go in there and try this with Touch Design. It worked great. I'm quite happy. Some people find it slightly too stroby and hard to follow. I think it's not enough, but I think it does justice to a sort of representation of the work for this moment. I don't think it's absolutely not the final thing, because I do see very specific visual things with that type of work, which I intend to realize in our live performances. I do see acting in it also. I'm gonna try to I'm gonna try also maybe some performance on stage with certain works, but we'll see that in like in the meantime. Who
Liburn.
is
This is Nicole Duran. She's a actually she just her ensemble, the B sharp trio, just finished a 15 minutes of fame for us last weekend.
oh nice,
Yeah,
very
yeah,
cool.
yeah. She was listening. You know, she's a big Ravel fan, if I remember correctly. And
Yeah.
yeah, they were awesome. They were great thing. 15 minutes of fame. We should. So you've been part of 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah. That's like 12 years ago, no?
Yeah.
2012 was it? I think with Viola Yip.
Yep. That's a
Yeah,
while ago.
that was great, man.
Right.
For me, like Vox Novus, I mean, you didn't ask me that, but I'm just gonna tell you now. But it was like you gotta understand like how, I mean, YouTube wasn't such a big thing. Not really, you know, didn't have that much access, and like finding Vox Novus was like a thing. It was quite interesting for all my generation here. Like we were like, because we've had also Dafina Zeshiri, which is a colleague of mine. She's written for, I think, for 15 Minutes of Fame also. I don't know if somebody else did. I've talked about it here and we've promoted it here too. Back then, I mean, oh man, because it's such a different landscape now, you know. And we were like, this was quite a interesting like window to the US that we never thought we'd have, you know. It's like, oh, 1 minute work to be played in the US. Is this real? You know what I mean? So we're like, and this is crazy because the piece that I wrote, uh, I was in a very weird situation between preparing to go to Paris, re-registering in the faculty here, but not being happy with studying in that level, playing, doing all these bands, forming new bands, another post-punk band, recording, and then writing also. And I was in a weird situation when I didn't have any staff paper. I can't remember why, but I remember writing it in Word, man. I wrote the piece in Word, and I talked with Viola. I was like, "Look, I don't even remember exactly the communication, but she did accept it because I wrote a lot of other instructions, I think, and we realized that I made like another. I made an electronic part also in the background that she played, and because it was for spoken word, it was a little bit easier to do, you know. I remember also like kind of not being happy with something written. I think maybe it was weird, but it was super nice. It really helped with the place where I was in studying, and it was a great thing, like a very very nice kind of boost to the idea that I had about composition, and in many ways it's a great thing, man. Like and I tended to go back to it because it's weird. You're like, 1 minute piece, I can write the 1 minute pieces for anything. And you just don't write it. It's weird because it's difficult. Like you would think like 1 minute, but it just doesn't work like that, you know. It's actually very hard, you know. I'm like, I like very short formatted things, especially like 20-second things, 15-second things, you know, promos, advertisement. I like that thing. It's very interesting as a platform. But 1 minute is not a joke, man. like conceptually.
Right.
It's not a joke, like because it's also 1 minute. It's not just 1 minute, it's 1 minute. You're not, your piece has to end in 1 minute,
Yeah.
you know?
And it has to be a piece.
And it has to be a piece.
Yeah.
That's why I phrased, like, I intonated differently. Because you're like, yeah, 1 minute. No, but it's not 1 minute of a work. Because 1 minute of a piece that's 15 minutes is 1 minute.
Right.
But 1 minute in itself is, many 5 seconds of 1 minute or milliseconds. It's kind of makes you think about time a lot. That kind of, yeah, that kind of constraint, if I can call it, or platform or whatever. Yeah, but I'm actually writing something for the violinist.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and
Yes,
he's
you
doing it with
should.
yeah.
That's. I would say that would be an imperative for you, to be honest. He
Yeah.
is. Yeah. If I had to pair people up, he seems like he's the right guy
Cool.
for your aesthetic. Not,
Yeah, I'm,
not,
I'm
not that I want to
actually.
put you in a box, but
Yeah, no. But it was great because, like, I'm in the middle of writing many things related to our rock and roll heritage, and I was like, oh, piece inspired by punk. I'm doing a 1 minute work with works by punk musicians in Kosovo. So, like, I think I'm gonna do. I mean, I'm working on that. The cellist looks quite interesting, also. Uh, yeah, I think it's a great platform, man. But you really gotta stick to it. Like,
thank you, dude. I
yeah, you
appreciate it.
gotta. Yeah, man.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, we can go with my story another time.
Okay,
I thank you so much for being a part
sure.
of this and coming and speaking to me. It's been a pleasure, and it's anyway. It's great to get to know you more,
Thanks.
and we should, and like I said, I'm a maximalist. More. Definitely right for 15 minutes of fame, and there are things coming down the pike. So hopefully we'll be able to find some other ways to collaborate.
Perfect. My pleasure. It was great speaking to you, and look forward to other occasions.
Great. And let me thank everybody for being on part. And yeah, we'll see you in the future. Thanks a lot.